Fix this engine and I'll marry you, recruit. General Patricia Hawkins's voice boomed across Fort Bradley's motor pool as she grabbed Private Jamal Thompson by the uniform collar. She forced the 20-year-old to his knees beside the broken M1 Abrams tank engine, his face inches from the greasy steel compartment. "What's wrong, boy? Never seen real machinery before?" She shoved his head closer to the engine. "Or are you too busy trying to figure out which end of a wrench to hold?" 200 soldiers watched in horrified silence. Hawkins yanked the cleaning rag from Thompson's trembling hands and slapped it across his face. His dark skin burned with humiliation as nervous laughter began rippling through the crowd. "I'm serious," she shouted, stepping back with arms crossed. "Fix this $1 million piece of equipment and I'll kiss you at the altar. Hell, you can even pick the dress." Her aide recorded every degrading second. Have you ever watched someone's future change because a superior picked the wrong person to humiliate? The humiliation echoed through Fort Bradley like wildfire. Within an hour, whispers followed Thompson through every corridor, every mess hall, every barracks. The video of General Hawkins forcing him to his knees had already spread across the base's social media channels, shared with cruel laughter and mocking comments. Fort Bradley sprawled across 50,000 acres of Georgia pine forest, home to the Army's most advanced armored vehicle training facility. The motor pool alone housed over 200 tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, and support equipment worth more than $2 billion. Massive concrete bays stretched for half a mile, each one capable of housing multiple main battle tanks. The air hung thick with diesel fumes, hydraulic fluid, and the metallic scent of steel under stress. It was here, among the mechanical giants and their life-sustaining fluids, that America's armored warriors learned their trade. Sergeants with grease-stained hands taught privates the difference between a seized bearing and a blown gasket. Officers studied tactical manuals while enlisted personnel made their theories actually work. Thompson moved through this mechanical cathedral like a ghost, invisible to everyone except when they needed someone to blame. For 3 months, he had cleaned tools, organized parts, swept floors, and emptied trash while real soldiers did real work. His olive green uniform bore no ribbons, no badges of honor, no signs of achievement, just his name tape and the single chevron that marked him as the lowest form of military life. The source of today's humiliation sat in Bay 7 like a sleeping giant. M1A2, Abrams Tank No. 47, had suffered catastrophic engine failure during live fire exercises 10 days earlier. Its AGT 1500 turbine engine, capable of propelling 68 tons of steel at 45 miles per hour across any terrain, now sat silent and cold as a tomb. The failure couldn't have come at a worse time. 3 Army mechanics had already sacrificed their sleep and sanity trying to diagnose the problem. Sergeant Martinez spent 6 days replacing electronic components, convinced the issue lay in the computer systems. Staff Sergeant Williams tried rebuilding the entire fuel injection system, certain that contaminated fuel was the culprit. Even Master Sergeant Rodriguez, with 22 years of experience and hands that could diagnose problems by touch alone, admitted defeat after 4 sleepless nights of troubleshooting. 2 civilian contractors from General Dynamics arrived yesterday, flown in from Detroit at enormous expense. They wheeled in laptop computers worth more than Thompson's annual salary and ran diagnostics that produced nothing but error codes and frustrated sighs. Their reputation preceded them. These were the engineers who designed the engine, who understood every bolt and circuit better than anyone else alive. Their failure sent shockwaves up the chain of command. The stakes couldn't be higher. NATO joint training exercises would begin in 72 hours. Allied commanders from 12 nations were already arriving at nearby Fort Benning, preparing to witness American military superiority in action. Tank 47 was scheduled to lead the demonstration, showcasing the newest battlefield management systems to potential buyers worth hundreds of millions in future contracts. Each day of delay cost the Army credibility and money. Pentagon officials called hourly, demanding updates and contingency plans. Defense contractors whispered about backup equipment and alternative demonstrations. Allied partners asked pointed questions about American reliability and maintenance standards. General Hawkins felt the pressure like a vice around her chest, squeezing tighter with each passing hour. 26 years of military service had brought her to this moment. The first female general to command Fort Bradley's armored division, she had fought for every star on her collar, endured countless doubts about her capabilities, and proved herself in Iraq and Afghanistan when other officers questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. Failure here would end her career and destroy everything she had built. The whispers would start immediately. Maybe they were right about women in leadership. Perhaps she wasn't ready for this responsibility. Should have given the command to someone more experienced. Her solution was simple and time-tested. Find someone to blame. "These diversity hires are killing us," she told Colonel Morrison during their morning briefing in the climate-controlled conference room overlooking the motor pool. "We're so busy checking boxes and meeting quotas that we forget to check actual competence. When did the Army become a social experiment instead of a fighting force?" Thompson heard the comment as he emptied trash cans near the conference room door. It wasn't the first time. Yesterday, she questioned urban recruitment standards during a staff meeting with visiting Pentagon officials. Last week, she suggested certain demographics lacked the mechanical aptitude required for modern warfare during a video call with defense contractors. The pattern was clear to anyone paying attention. Hawkins had systematically blocked 3 minority promotions since taking command 18 months earlier. Staff Sergeant Jackson, a brilliant communications specialist with perfect evaluations and commendations from 2 combat deployments, was denied advancement to Warrant Officer School for undefined leadership concerns. Specialist Rodriguez saw his application for Signal Corps training mysteriously disappear from the system, only to be told he had missed the deadline when he inquired. Private Williams received extra duty assignments that conveniently prevented him from attending leadership development courses. Each time, Hawkins cited vague readiness concerns or cultural fit issues that sounded reasonable on paper but felt hollow in practice. The Equal Opportunity Office received complaints, but nothing stuck. She was too careful, too politically savvy to leave obvious evidence of discrimination. Her language stayed clinical, her reasoning plausible, her documentation thorough. Thompson knew the game intimately. He had seen it in civilian life, watched his uncle Marcus navigate similar challenges in the trucking industry where contracts went to reliable companies, and reliability somehow correlated with the owner's skin color. The difference was that Marcus owned his shop and could fight back. Here, Thompson cleaned other people's tools and kept his mouth shut. But he also watched, and listened, and learned. While Martinez struggled with electrical diagnostics, Thompson noticed the fuel pressure readings displayed on his screens. While Williams replaced injection components, Thompson observed the hydraulic flow patterns and the way fluid moved through the system. While Rodriguez searched computer databases for solutions, Thompson remembered specific lessons from his uncle's shop about turbine engine contamination and the subtle signs that computers couldn't detect. The problem wasn't electronic failure, despite what the diagnostic suggested. It wasn't mechanical breakdown, despite the obvious symptoms. It was contamination in the fuel system, probably microscopic sand infiltration from recent desert training exercises. The particles were smaller than human hair, but deadly to precision machinery, scoring the perfectly machined surfaces inside the fuel injectors like sandpaper on glass. Standard diagnostics wouldn't detect it because computers measured electrical signals and fluid pressures, not the microscopic mechanical wear patterns that caused the actual failures. You needed human senses, ears that could distinguish between normal engine noise and the subtle vibrations of damaged components, hands that could feel the difference between smooth operation and impending failure. Thompson knew because he had seen identical failures in civilian diesel engines during his years working at his uncle's shop. Heavy-duty truck repairs included turbocharged diesels that operated under similar stress conditions, and sand contamination was a common problem for vehicles operating in construction sites, quarries, or unpaved rural areas. The symptoms were always the same: intermittent power loss, unusual vibrations, and diagnostic codes that pointed to electronic problems when the real issue was purely mechanical. But who would listen to a private who emptied trash cans and swept floors? The answer came that afternoon when Hawkins arrived for her weekly motor pool inspection, flanked by her aide and the visiting Pentagon officials who had flown down to assess the situation personally. The pressure was visible in her rigid posture and clipped speech. 3 phone calls from Washington had made it clear: fix the tank, or find a new career. Hawkins needed a scapegoat, and Thompson was convenient. She gathered the entire motor pool company in Bay 7, ostensibly for a motivational speech about military excellence and mission readiness. 200 soldiers formed neat ranks between the massive vehicles, their boots polished to mirror perfection despite the industrial setting, their uniforms pressed and starched according to regulation. You won't believe what Thompson decides to do when Hawkins calls him out in front of everyone. The foundation of Thompson's quiet confidence came from a grease-stained garage in East Atlanta, where the smell of diesel fuel mixed with southern humidity and the sound of air wrenches echoed off corrugated metal walls. Williams Auto and Truck Repair occupied a full city block, its reputation built on one simple principle: if it had an engine, Marcus Williams could fix it. Marcus wasn't just Thompson's uncle. He was his hero, his teacher, and the only father figure he had ever known. A man who came from nothing and built something lasting, Marcus had scraped together enough money to buy a single hydraulic lift and a set of used tools. 30 years later, his shop employed 12 mechanics and serviced everything from city buses to long-haul trucks. "Son, an engine doesn't care about your skin color," Marcus had told 8-year-old Jamal during his first visit to the shop. "It only speaks the truth. You listen to what it's telling you, treat it with respect, and it'll run forever. But try to fool it, ignore what it needs, or half-ass the work, and it'll break down on you every single time." Those words became Thompson's guiding philosophy. Listen first, speak with your hands, let the work prove who you are. Every summer since age 10, Thompson had spent his days in that garage, learning the language of internal combustion. Marcus taught him to diagnose problems by sound: the whistle of a failing turbo, the knock of worn bearings, the subtle hiss of a cracked head gasket. By 12, Thompson could rebuild a diesel engine's fuel system blindfolded. By 14, he was troubleshooting electronic control modules that stumped mechanics twice his age. The lessons went beyond technical knowledge. Marcus insisted on precision in everything. Measurements exact to the thousandth of an inch, torque specifications followed religiously, cleanliness that would satisfy a surgeon. "Sloppy work kills people," he would say, tightening a bolt that Thompson had left slightly loose. "A poorly maintained engine means someone doesn't make it home safe. The same principle applies everywhere." Thompson absorbed it all like a sponge. While other teenagers played video games, he studied technical manuals. While they hung out at malls, he attended trade shows where manufacturers demonstrated new diagnostic equipment. By 16, he had earned his first ASE certification. By 18, he held the Master Technician credential, the youngest person in Georgia to achieve that level. The achievement meant everything to Marcus, who had fought his entire life for recognition and respect. "You're going places I never could," he told Thompson at the certification ceremony. "But don't you ever forget where you came from or who taught you to listen to engines." College came next. Community college, because that's what they could afford. Thompson studied mechanical engineering while working nights at the shop, his textbooks stained with hydraulic fluid, and his assignments completed between repair jobs. His professors were amazed at his practical knowledge. While classmates struggled with theoretical concepts, Thompson understood viscerally how systems worked because he had rebuilt them with his own hands. His GPA reflected that understanding. 3.8 in a program where most students struggled to maintain 3.0. He earned academic scholarships, recognition from the engineering department, and offers from several four-year universities. The future looked bright until his grandmother's medical bills started arriving. Diabetes complications led to kidney problems, which led to dialysis 3 times a week, and medications that cost more than Marcus's shop could afford. Thompson's scholarship money went to medical expenses instead of university tuition. His dreams of mechanical engineering degrees got postponed indefinitely. That's when military recruiters started calling. The Army offered steady pay, medical benefits for dependents, and education benefits after service. Thompson saw it as a temporary detour: serve his time, take care of his family, then return to civilian life with veterans' preferences and GI Bill funding for his degree. The recruiter promised technical training, advancement opportunities, and respect for his existing certifications. What Thompson got instead was basic training followed by assignment to general duties at Fort Bradley. His applications for motor transport MOS were rejected for vague readiness concerns. His ASE certifications were dismissed as civilian credentials of limited military value. His engineering coursework was ignored completely, so he cleaned floors and organized tools while less qualified soldiers worked on engines he could repair in his sleep. He watched mechanics struggle with problems he could solve in minutes. He listened to officers complain about maintenance failures that proper procedures would prevent. But Marcus had taught him patience along with precision. "Sometimes you have to prove yourself twice," his uncle had said during Thompson's darkest moments. "Once to show what you can do, and once to show you won't give up when people try to keep you down." Thompson carried that lesson with him through every humiliating day at Fort Bradley. Every dismissive comment, every overlooked suggestion, every moment of being treated as invisible rather than capable. He knew his time would come. He just hadn't expected it to arrive with a general's cruel laughter and 200 witnesses watching to see if he would break. Marcus's final lesson echoed in his mind. When someone challenges your competence, don't argue with words, show them work. The motor pool fell silent as Thompson made his decision. "Soldiers," Hawkins began, her voice carrying across the concrete expanse like a drill sergeant's cadence. "We face a crisis of competence. This tank represents American military superiority. Its failure reflects on every one of us." Thompson stood in the back row with other junior enlisted personnel, trying to remain invisible among the sea of olive-green uniforms. The familiar weight of humiliation sat heavy on his shoulders, but something else stirred beneath it. A quiet anger that had been building for 3 months. "But maybe," Hawkins continued, her steel-gray eyes scanning the formation like a predator selecting prey, "we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe the problem isn't the equipment. Maybe it's the people we trust to maintain it." Nervous glances rippled through the ranks. Everyone knew where this was heading. The general's pattern of finding scapegoats had become as predictable as morning formation. "I see soldiers who think military service is an entitlement program, who believes showing up is enough, who expects advancement without earning it." Her gaze locked onto Thompson's face like a laser sight. "Who thinks diversity quotas matter more than demonstrated competence?" The words hit like physical blows. Thompson felt his fellow soldiers shifting slightly away, creating an invisible buffer zone around the target of their general's wrath. Even his squad leader found something fascinating to study on his boots. Pentagon officials flanked Hawkins, their expensive suits and clipboard-wielding aides creating an atmosphere of high-stakes theater. One of them whispered something urgent into his phone. Another checked his watch with obvious impatience. The NATO demonstration was 48 hours away, and everyone in the room understood what failure would mean. That's when Hawkins made her fatal mistake. Drunk on power and desperate to regain control of a spiraling situation, she transformed casual cruelty into public challenge. "You know what?" she announced, stepping toward the disabled tank like a prosecutor approaching evidence. "I'm tired of excuses. I'm tired of failure. I'm tired of soldiers who can't back up their paychecks with performance." She slammed her hand against the tank's armor plating, the metallic ring echoing through Bay 7 like a bell tolling for judgment. "So here's my offer to this entire company. Any soldier who thinks they have what it takes to fix this engine can step forward right now. Prove you deserve to wear the uniform. Show me that American soldiers still have what it takes to solve problems instead of making them." Absolute silence greeted her challenge. 200 soldiers stood motionless, afraid to breathe too loudly. "Come on!" Hawkins's voice rose to a battlefield shout. "Where's all that confidence? Where's that military pride I keep hearing about in your performance evaluations? Or are you all just waiting for someone else to solve your problems while you collect your paychecks?" Her eyes found Thompson again, and this time there was no escaping the spotlight of her attention. The trap had been set with surgical precision, and everyone in the room knew it. "What about you, Private Thompson?" she called out, her voice carrying a mocking sweetness that made the cruelty even sharper. "You've been watching our mechanics work all week while you cleaned around them. Think you learned something useful? Ready to show us what you're really made of?" Every face in the formation turned toward him like flowers following the sun. 200 pairs of eyes, waiting to see if he would take the bait or slink away in shame. The weight of their collective stare felt heavier than the tank itself. "Well," Hawkins pressed, stepping closer to the formation, Cat got your tongue again? Or are you going to stand there like a statue while real soldiers figure out how to fix your mess? That's when Master Sergeant Rodriguez emerged from the crowd of senior NCOs, his weathered face creased with concern. At 52, Rodriguez had seen enough young soldiers destroyed by officer politics to recognize a setup when he saw one. "General," he said carefully, his voice carrying the respectful authority that came with 22 years of service. "With all due respect, that engine has stumped our best mechanics for 10 days. It's running classified military specifications and adaptive fuel management systems that require specialized training to—" "Are you questioning my judgment, Master Sergeant?" Hawkins cut him off with ice in her voice. "No, ma'am. Just want to make sure we understand the complexity of what we're asking." Rodriguez's interruption gave Thompson a moment to breathe, to think, to remember Marcus's lessons about engines and pride and proving yourself when the world expected you to fail. The Master Sergeant caught Thompson's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Not encouragement exactly, but acknowledgement that the choice was his to make. Hawkins sensed the moment slipping away and doubled down with the ruthlessness that had carried her to the general's stars. "Fine," she announced, her voice carrying across the motor pool like a proclamation. "Let's make this interesting. I'm putting real stakes on the table, my personal guarantee." She pulled out her phone and opened the base social media account, switching it to live stream mode. The red recording light blinked to life as dozens of soldiers' phones appeared, documenting every word for posterity. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you, recruit," she declared, her voice dripping with theatrical contempt. "That's my promise to this entire base, broadcast live for everyone to see. Get our tank running by 1800 hours today, and I'll personally pin stars on your collar and kiss you at the altar." Cruel laughter erupted from some of the junior officers. Even a few enlisted soldiers couldn't suppress nervous chuckles at the absurdity of the challenge. "But when you fail," Hawkins continued, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the bay, "when you prove that all your watching and learning was just another waste of military time and resources, you'll spend the next month scrubbing every latrine on this base with a toothbrush. And everyone here will know exactly what happens when incompetence meets real responsibility." The livestream viewer count was climbing rapidly. Comments began flooding in from across the base as word spread through social media. The challenge had just become a public spectacle, witnessed by thousands instead of hundreds. Pentagon officials exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't how professional military leadership was supposed to work. But none of them moved to intervene. Politics and careerism had its own logic, and challenging a general in front of enlisted troops was career suicide. Thompson felt his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird. His mouth went dry as desert sand. His hands trembled slightly as he considered his options with crystalline clarity. He could refuse, stay quiet, accept the humiliation and hope it passed. That was the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that every instinct for self-preservation screamed at him to make. Or he could step forward into the light and bet everything on what Marcus had taught him about engines, dignity, and the moment when staying invisible became more dangerous than being seen. The silence stretched like a held breath, broken only by the distant hum of ventilation fans and the soft buzz of recording devices capturing every second of his decision. Thompson stepped forward. The simple movement sent a ripple of shock through the formation. Soldiers who had been avoiding eye contact suddenly stared with open amazement. Pentagon officials looked up from their phones. Even Hawkins seemed momentarily stunned that her carefully constructed trap had actually caught someone. "I'll do it," Thompson said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'll fix your engine, General." Hawkins recovered quickly, her predatory smile returning with renewed intensity. "Outstanding, Private. Let's see what 3 months of watching real mechanics has taught you." She gestured toward the massive tank with theatrical grandeur. "You have until 1800 hours. That's 4 hours to accomplish what trained professionals couldn't do in 10 days. Master Sergeant Rodriguez will supervise to ensure you don't damage anything expensive." Rodriguez approached Thompson with a mixture of admiration and concern etched on his weathered face. "You sure about this, son?" he whispered. "That engine is worth more than most people make in a lifetime." Thompson nodded, remembering Marcus's words about engines speaking truth. I've been listening to it all week, Sergeant. I know what's wrong. The crowd pressed closer as Thompson walked to the tool crib, selecting basic hand tools with the deliberate care of a surgeon choosing instruments. He ignored the expensive diagnostic computers that had failed the civilian contractors, focusing instead on simple, reliable equipment that would let him see and feel what the machine was trying to tell him. First revelation: diagnostic mastery. While the gathered crowd watched in fascination, Thompson knelt beside the massive engine and placed his hands on the cold metal housing. He closed his eyes, shutting out the whispers and camera phones, and listened. "What's he doing?" someone muttered. "Probably praying," another voice answered with a snicker. Thompson ignored them, running his palms along the engine block until he found what he was looking for, a subtle vibration that shouldn't exist in properly functioning machinery. He pulled his personal compression gauge from his pocket, a tool he had bought with his own money and carried everywhere. "Martinez tried compression testing," Sergeant Williams called out. "Readings were normal." "Static compression, yes," Thompson replied, connecting his gauge to a different port. "But I'm checking dynamic compression under simulated load conditions." He cranked the engine through several cycles, watching the needle fluctuate in patterns that told a story the static tests had missed. The readings showed pressure variations that indicated microscopic scoring in the fuel injection system, damage too small for standard diagnostics to detect, but significant enough to disrupt the precise fuel-air mixture required for optimal performance. "There," Thompson said, pointing to the gauge. "Pressure variations of 0.03 psi between cylinders. That's caused by surface irregularities in the injector nozzles." Rodriguez leaned over to examine the readings, his experienced eyes widening. "That's within normal tolerances according to the manual. For new components, yes, but this engine has been through desert training exercises. Sand particles smaller than human hair can score the precision surfaces inside fuel injectors. The damage is microscopic, but it compounds over time until the fuel spray pattern degrades enough to cause power fluctuations." Thompson showed the gathered crowd the fuel pressure readings displayed on his gauge. "See how the pressure spikes unevenly? That's not electrical failure like the computers diagnosed. That's mechanical wear from contamination." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several mechanics pushed forward to examine Thompson's readings more closely. Even the civilian contractors exchanged surprised glances. "How did you know to test that?" Rodriguez asked. "Because I listened," Thompson replied simply. "The engine's been trying to tell everyone what's wrong for 10 days. The vibration pattern is identical to contamination failures I've seen in civilian diesel engines." Second revelation: system integration expertise. Thompson moved to the fuel system control panel, his fingers dancing across switches and gauges with practiced confidence. The watching crowd grew larger as word spread through the base that something unprecedented was happening in Bay 7. The computers kept pointing to electronic control module failures, Thompson explained, pulling up diagnostic screens that had confounded the experts. But AGT 1500 turbine engines use hybrid control systems, mechanical hydraulics for primary functions, electronics for optimization and monitoring. He traced fuel lines with his finger, following the path from tank to engine with the certainty of someone who understood the system's logic. Everyone tried to fix the electronic side because that's what threw error codes. But the real problem is mechanical contamination disrupting the baseline performance that the electronics are trying to optimize. Thompson pointed to a series of pressure readings that had been dismissed as normal. These hydraulic pressure fluctuations look normal individually, but when you map them against the electronic control inputs, you can see the system fighting itself. The mechanical components are delivering inconsistent performance, so the electronic controls keep trying to compensate with adjustments that can't fix a physical problem. Master Sergeant Rodriguez studied the data with growing amazement. "That's graduate-level systems analysis, Private. Where did you learn to think like that?" "From understanding how things actually work instead of just following diagnostic flowcharts," Thompson replied. "Military engines are complex, but the basic principles are the same as any turbocharged diesel. You have to understand the whole system, not just individual components." He pulled out technical manuals he had been studying during off-duty hours, pages marked with notes and diagrams in his careful handwriting. The documents were covered with grease stains and coffee rings, evidence of countless hours spent learning systems that his official duties never required him to understand. "I've been studying these specs for months," Thompson admitted. "Every free moment, every break, every evening after duty, because I knew someday I'd get a chance to prove what I could do." The civilian contractors pushed through the crowd, their expensive suits looking out of place among the uniformed soldiers. "Show us the contamination," the lead engineer demanded. "If you're right, we need to see physical evidence." Third revelation: innovation under pressure. Thompson nodded and moved to the fuel filtration system, where standard maintenance procedures had been followed exactly according to regulations. He removed the primary fuel filter, a component that had been replaced twice during the troubleshooting process. "This filter looks clean because it's new," Thompson explained, holding it up to the light. "But the contamination isn't in the main fuel lines. It's trapped in the injector nozzles themselves, downstream from the filtration system." He pulled out a small magnet and ran it along the fuel rails, collecting microscopic metal particles that glinted like glitter in the fluorescent lighting. "Sand contamination causes abrasive wear. The particles are too small to see individually, but they accumulate in the precision machine surfaces where tolerances are measured in 10,000ths of an inch." "How do we prove that without disassembling the entire injection system?" Rodriguez asked. "That would take days and void the warranty." Thompson smiled, the first genuine expression of confidence he had shown since stepping forward. "We don't disassemble it. We clean it in place using a technique my uncle taught me for field repairs on commercial diesel engines." He moved to the maintenance supply area and began gathering materials that seemed random to the watching crowd: brake cleaner, compressed air, plastic tubing, and pressure gauges. Working with the focused intensity of someone who had done this before, he fashioned a temporary cleaning system using available shop equipment. "This creates controlled pressure pulses that flush contamination from the injector nozzles without disassembly," Thompson explained as he connected tubing to various points in the fuel system. "It's not in any manual because it's a field-expedient repair technique, but it's proven effective on similar engines." The watching crowd held its collective breath as Thompson activated his improvised cleaning system. Compressed air and cleaning solvent pulsed through the fuel injectors in carefully timed intervals, carrying away microscopic debris that had been choking the engine's performance. After 20 minutes of patient work, Thompson stepped back and nodded to Rodriguez. "Try starting it now." The master sergeant climbed into the driver's compartment and turned the ignition key. The AGT 1500 turbine engine roared to life with a sound like controlled thunder, smooth and powerful and absolutely perfect. The crowd erupted in amazement. The engine that had been silent for 10 days now purged like a contented cat, its vibrations steady and strong. Diagnostic displays showed green lights across every system. Performance readings exceeded manufacturer specifications. Rodriguez emerged from the driver's compartment with an expression of pure wonder. "It's running at 115% efficiency, better than when it was new." Thompson nodded calmly. "The cleaning process removes not just contamination, but also carbon deposits that accumulate during normal operation. It actually improves performance beyond baseline specifications." General Hawkins stood frozen, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been respect. The live stream viewer count had climbed past 50,000, with comments flooding in from military personnel around the world. The civilian contractors surrounded Thompson, peppering him with technical questions about his cleaning process and diagnostic techniques. Pentagon officials huddled in urgent conversation, realizing they had just witnessed something that would require significant changes to official maintenance procedures. But Thompson only had eyes for the smoothly running engine, listening to its perfect song and remembering Marcus's words about letting the work speak for itself. General Hawkins stood motionless for 30 seconds, her face a mask of controlled fury as the perfect engine purr filled Bay 7. The livestream comments exploded with celebration from military personnel worldwide, but her steel-gray eyes showed only calculation and damage control. "Impressive trick, Private," she said finally, her voice carrying across the motor pool with forced calm. "But any monkey can get lucky once. One successful repair doesn't prove competence. It proves you got fortunate with a guess." Thompson remained at attention, his hands still stained with hydraulic fluid, but his posture was military perfect. It wasn't luck, General. It was a proper diagnosis and field-proven repair techniques. "Prove it!" Hawkins snapped, desperation creeping into her voice as she realized her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. "Anyone can follow someone else's solution. Show me you actually understand what you did." The challenge hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. 50,000 live-stream viewers waited for Thompson's response. Pentagon officials leaned forward. Even the civilian contractors stopped their excited conversations to witness this moment of truth. Master Sergeant Rodriguez stepped closer, his weathered face creased with concern. "General, with respect, Private Thompson just accomplished something our best people couldn't." "I'm not talking to you, Sergeant." Hawkins cut him off, her command voice sharp enough to cut steel. "I want to hear from the miracle worker himself. Explain to me exactly how you knew what was wrong when trained professionals with decades of experience missed it completely." Rodriguez pulled out his tablet and began recording, understanding that this moment would determine not just Thompson's future, but potentially change how the Army approached technical training and personnel evaluation. Thompson took a breath, remembering Marcus's lessons about speaking truth to power. "General, the problem wasn't that our mechanics lacked skill. The problem was that they followed procedures designed for different failure modes." He walked to the maintenance blackboard mounted on the bay wall and picked up a piece of chalk with steady hands. "Standard diagnostic protocols assume electrical or major mechanical failure because those are the most common problems, but this engine suffered contamination damage from desert training operations." With precise strokes, Thompson began drawing a technical diagram that showed the fuel injection system's internal components. His lines were perfectly straight, his proportions exact, his labeling professional. Every detail demonstrated a deep understanding of complex mechanical systems. Sand particles smaller than talcum powder entered the fuel system during field exercises, he explained, sketching the contamination pathway. The particles were too small to trigger filtration alarms, but large enough to score precision surfaces inside the injector nozzles. Hawkins watched with growing alarm as Thompson's diagram revealed technical knowledge that should have been impossible for a junior enlisted soldier to possess. "Where did you learn to draw technical schematics like that?" "From studying the systems I work around every day, ma'am, and from prior experience with similar engines in civilian applications." Thompson continued drawing, showing how microscopic wear patterns created pressure variations that confused electronic diagnostic systems. "Prior experience?" Hawkins's voice carried a note of panic. "What prior experience? Your personnel file shows basic education and general labor background." Rodriguez cleared his throat meaningfully. "General, maybe we should review Private Thompson's complete background before making assumptions about his qualifications." The Master Sergeant approached with Thompson's personnel folder, thick with documents that had been overlooked or deliberately ignored during his assignment process. He opened it to reveal ASE Master Technician certifications, community college transcripts, and technical training records that painted a picture completely different from the diversity hire narrative Hawkins had constructed. "AS Master Technician at age 18, Rodriguez read aloud for the live stream audience. "Mechanical engineering coursework with a 3.8 GPA. Specialized training in turbocharged diesel systems and electronic engine management." Thompson's chalk continued moving across the blackboard, creating a detailed cross-section drawing that showed exactly how his cleaning process had restored proper fuel spray patterns. "The repair technique I used is documented in civilian heavy equipment manuals, but not included in military procedures because it was developed after our technical orders were written." Hawkins's face had gone pale. The implications were staggering, not just that she had been wrong about Thompson, but that her systematic discrimination had prevented the Army from utilizing genuinely exceptional talent. "Furthermore," Thompson continued, setting down his chalk and turning to face the general directly, "this same contamination pattern will appear in approximately 60% of our desert-trained vehicles within the next 6 months. I can write a preventive maintenance bulletin that will save the Army millions in unnecessary repairs and prevent combat readiness failures." The motor pool fell completely silent except for the smooth purr of the repaired engine. Pentagon officials exchanged meaningful glances, understanding that they had just witnessed a demonstration of technical competence that would require serious institutional changes. Hawkins opened her mouth to respond, then closed it as she realized that anything she said would be recorded and broadcast to an audience that had just watched her assumptions destroyed by undeniable evidence. Thompson's steady hand had drawn perfect technical diagrams while her hands trembled with the knowledge that her career was ending in real time, broadcast live to the world. Master Sergeant Rodriguez closed Thompson's personnel file and looked directly into the live stream camera, his voice carrying the authority of 22 years of military service. Based on demonstrated technical competence and problem-solving ability displayed here today, I'm immediately recommending Private Thompson for promotion to specialist and transfer to motor transport MOS with advanced technical training. The motor pool erupted in spontaneous applause. 57,000 viewers flooded the live stream with supportive comments. Even the Pentagon officials nodded approvingly, recognizing exceptional talent when they witnessed it firsthand. Within minutes, Thompson's phone buzzed with a call from Fort Bradley's commanding general, who had been watching the live stream from his office. The conversation was brief but decisive. "Son, I've been following your demonstration," the general's voice carried clearly through the motor pool's speakers. "Effective immediately, you're assigned as technical advisor to our NATO demonstration team. We need that preventive maintenance bulletin written and distributed before Allied commanders see any more equipment failures." Thompson snapped to attention despite being on the phone. "Yes, sir. I can have preliminary recommendations ready within 24 hours. "Outstanding. Master Sergeant Rodriguez will coordinate your new duties." "And Private Thompson? The Army owes you an apology for not recognizing your capabilities sooner." Rodriguez stepped forward with a grin spreading across his weathered face. "Private Thompson, you're also being fast-tracked for warrant officer training. The Army needs technical experts who can think outside standard procedures." The opportunities kept flowing. The civilian contractors from General Dynamics approached with business cards and offered to consult on field maintenance procedures. NATO commanders requested copies of Thompson's diagnostic techniques for their own maintenance programs. Thompson felt overwhelmed by the sudden recognition, but Master Sergeant Rodriguez placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You earned every bit of this, son. Your uncle would be proud." The livestream viewer count had reached 85,000, with military personnel from around the world sharing their own stories of underestimated talent and systematic barriers. Comments poured in supporting Thompson and calling for broader changes in how the military identified and developed technical expertise. General Hawkins remained silent, her face ashen as she watched her carefully constructed world collapse around her. The recording would be reviewed by equal opportunity investigators within hours. Thompson's transformation from invisible janitor to recognized technical expert was complete, broadcast live for the world to witness. The consequences for General Hawkins arrived with military precision and bureaucratic inevitability. Within 48 hours, the live stream video had been viewed 2.3 million times across multiple platforms, generating headlines from Military Times to CNN. The hashtag #JusticeForThompson trended nationwide as veterans shared their own stories of discrimination and wasted talent. The Army's response was swift and comprehensive. An equal opportunity investigation launched immediately, led by a team from Pentagon headquarters who had watched the entire incident unfold in real time. Hawkins's pattern of blocking minority promotions, which had seemed invisible when scattered across months of paperwork, became glaringly obvious when examined as a systematic practice. Staff Sergeant Jackson, Specialist Rodriguez, and Private Williams, the three soldiers whose advancement Hawkins had previously blocked, were immediately reviewed for promotion. Their cases, once buried in bureaucratic delays, moved to the front of every queue. Jackson received his warrant officer school assignment within a week. Rodriguez was accepted to Signal Corps training with full honors. Williams got his leadership development course slot plus back pay for the delayed promotion. Hawkins herself faced a formal letter of reprimand that would permanently stain her military record. The document, signed by a two-star general and filed in her official personnel jacket, cited failure to maintain equal opportunity standards and conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline. Any hope of promotion to full colonel evaporated instantly. Her command of Fort Bradley's armored division ended within 30 days. The reassignment orders came with bureaucratic politeness but unmistakable finality. Transfer to Pentagon staff position for administrative duties pending further evaluation. In military terms, it was professional death, a desk job with no authority, no troops to lead, and no path forward. The promotion to Washington was punishment disguised as advancement. Hawkins would spend her remaining years reviewing paperwork and attending meetings where younger officers made the decisions that once belonged to her. She had become the thing she most feared: irrelevant. The viral video followed her everywhere. Military colleagues who once sought her approval now avoided eye contact in Pentagon corridors. Social media comments ranged from scathing criticism to disappointed resignation from fellow female officers who felt she had damaged their collective cause. But the most profound consequences were systemic. Fort Bradley implemented the Technical Skills Recognition Program within 60 days, allowing any soldier to demonstrate mechanical competence for military occupational specialty reclassification. Thompson helped design the evaluation standards, ensuring the talent would never again be trapped by administrative prejudice or bureaucratic oversight. The program spread rapidly to other installations as senior commanders realized how much capability they had been overlooking. Hundreds of soldiers with civilian technical experience found new opportunities to use their skills in military service. Maintenance efficiency improved dramatically as the right people finally got assigned to technical positions. Thompson's preventive maintenance bulletin became standard procedure across all armored divisions. His field expedient repair techniques were incorporated into official technical manuals. The Army saved an estimated $12 million in the first year alone by implementing his contamination prevention protocols. General Dynamics offered Thompson a civilian position with a starting salary that exceeded most officers' pay. Other defense contractors competed to hire the young man whose innovative thinking had solved problems their engineers couldn't crack. Thompson politely declined them all, choosing instead to serve his full enlistment and pursue warrant officer training. His grandmother received full military-dependent medical coverage, ensuring her diabetes treatment would never again threaten the family's financial stability. Marcus's auto shop in Atlanta got a lucrative contract to provide civilian technical training for military mechanics, bringing his practical knowledge into official Army curricula. The motor pool where Thompson had once been humiliated became a pilgrimage site of sorts. Young soldiers facing their own challenges would visit Bay 7, where a small plaque now commemorated the day when talent finally overcame prejudice through simple demonstration of competence. Hawkins's nameplate had been quietly removed from her former office door, replaced by generic lettering that read, "Administrative Services." The change was subtle but symbolic. Power built on discrimination could disappear as quickly as it had been constructed. 6 months later, Warrant Officer Thompson stood in the same motor pool bay where General Hawkins had once forced him to his knees. The M1A2 Abrams engines around him purged with perfect reliability, maintained by soldiers who now understood that contamination prevention was simpler than major repairs. Thompson's technical innovations had prevented 90% of desert-related engine failures across the entire armored division. His diagnostic training program had graduated 43 soldiers into advanced technical positions. The motor pool that once wasted millions on unnecessary repairs now operated at peak efficiency. Hawkins's former office remained empty, her replacement still being selected through a process that emphasized leadership competence over political connections. The live stream video continued generating views, inspiring countless others who had been underestimated to step forward and prove their worth. Sometimes the person with the lowest rank carries the highest knowledge. Have you ever been underestimated because of who you are instead of what you know? Share your story in the comments below. There's a detail at minute 4:30 that only sharp-eyed viewers will catch about Thompson's true qualifications. And if this reminded you that talent serves at every level, subscribe for more stories about people who refused to stay invisible when the world needed their gifts most.